This time, we will learn how to graph integers on a number line. But before that one, there are things that you need to remember when you try to consider number lines. First, number lines can be horizontal or vertical. Horizontal number lines are already not new to you. When you try to consider horizontal number lines, the middlemost of a number line is 0, and then its right would be positive. And that would be true as well in a vertical number line. It's just that on top of the vertical number line would be the location of the positive integers. So, the negative integers now, if we consider a horizontal number line, would be on its left side. And on a vertical number line would be below 0. Next, spacing and labeling vary. So for example, in our horizontal number line, the spacing here would mean that from here to here, that would be just 1. And from 1 to 2, that's also 1, which is called the scale. So the scale here is now 1. So we have here another example of horizontal number lines. But if you notice, unlike our first horizontal number line, the scale is 1. But here, every space is 5. So 5, another 5 to get 10, and another 5 to get 15, and so on. So our scale here is 5. Here in our last example of a number line, there's some spacing with no labels, and that would happen in other situations. So what do we do to know the labels of the missing spacing? So first, you might consider the ones with labels 0 and 3. So the distance from 0 to 3 is 3. And then identify the number of spacing between 0 and 3. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. 3 spacing. So you will have to divide the 3 by another 3, which is equal to 1. So that means that the scaling here is 1. So let's try to apply this in the missing labels. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The last one is to plot an integer, place a point at that value. So if you don't know what's the meaning of plot, plot is just similar to graphing. And if you're not aware what's the meaning of graphing, the best word for that, which is familiar to you, is locating. So when you are asked to graph or plot, you are asked to locate a certain integer on a number line. And to do that, as mentioned here, place a point at that value. So let's say we will be using a color green here. And let's try to plot or graph 3. So that means I have to put a point here on 3 as an indicator that this is the location of the 3. Or if you're asked to locate 30 here in our second number line, so 30 is here. So put a dot on the number line. So take note, Some common mistakes, others would encircle the number or the label, which is wrong. So again, to graph or plot, you need to place a point at that value on the number line, not below and not even above. So let us now try some examples. So graph 1 and -1 on the number line. So the scaling here is just 1, and actually you can see 1 and -1 already here. 0, based from 0, 1 is on the right because it's positive, so 1 is here. So put or place a dot or a point. -1, it's negative, so it would be on the left part of the 0. So -1 here. So if you notice, if we will try to base both numbers or its equation from 0, you will notice that in terms of distance, they're the same. Because from 0 to 1, that's 1 unit away. From 0 to -1, that is also 1 unit as well. That is why -1 and 1 are also called as opposite numbers, because they have the same distance from 0. Let's have example number 2. Let's try to graph -3 and 1 on the number line. So if you notice, there are some intervals here with no labels, and you don't immediately see 1 and -3 on the number line. So that means you have to identify a certain or choose a number, and you would compare it from 0 and find its distance. In our case here, perhaps we can use 2. So from 0 to 2, the distance would be 2. And if you notice, there are 2 spaces. So we will divide 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. That means the scaling here is 1. Since it's positive, we must go up from 0. 0, then 1. So 1 is here. So place a point. Next is -3. Since it's negative, we have to move downwards from 0. So this is -1, -2, and finally we have here -3. So use a dot as an indicator of its location. Let's try example 3. Graph 5, -5, and -10 on the number line. So this example is quite tricky because there's a lot of intervals with no labels. So what you need to do here is to choose a number, and you would try to find its distance from 0. So from 0 to 30, that's 30. And now divide it with the number of spaces between 0 and 30. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 30 divided by 6. 30 divided by 6 is 5. That means that the scaling here is by 5. So from 0, go to the right, and you will now see that this is the location of 5. Now put up dot or a point on the number line. Okay, next is -5. Since it's negative, we have to move going to the left. So, -5 is here. So, place a point as an indicator that this is the location of -5. And lastly, we have -10. So, from -5, this would be -10. So, again, put the dot as an indicator of its location. Let us have our last example. Graph 4, -10, and 22 on the number line. So 4 is already here, so no need. So you can use a point, place it on top of its location. Next would be -10, but there's no -10 here. And there are some intervals with no labels. So you need to figure out first the scale. So to find that, you can use 4. So from 0 to 4, that's 4. And how many spaces do we have between 0 and 4? 1, 2. So there are 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. That means from 0, next would be 2. And finally, you got 4, 6, 8, and so on. But since we're looking for -10, we have to move downwards. From 0, -2, -4, -6, -8, -10. So here is the location of -10. And finally, we can graph -10 now using a point. Next is -22. So we just have to continue. -10, -12, -14, -16, -18, -20, and finally, -22. So, use a point as an indicator that this is now the location of -22.